Hello, persons. I have returned. I have been using now a combination of Windows 10 and Garuda Linux for about the past few weeks. So I'm going to weigh in with a little comparison on what I've noticed between the two. Some of these things are going to be things that were pretty important to me, pretty important to users in general. Others are going to be things that are super specific and maybe only apply to me and a handful of other people. But nonetheless, they're the things that I noticed. So here it is: Windows 10 versus Garuda Linux. So starting off my list is going to be something relatively arbitrary. This is just a bit of a pet peeve of mine. I noticed when I'm starting up my Windows machine and I'm logging in, I need to hit a key or, press the mouse to kind of wake up the login screen. So I can't just start typing my password. I'll have to start, hit space or something and then start typing the password and hope that it woke the login screen up fast enough that I can, type it in. Linux, on the other hand, Garuda Linux, I just type it in and away I go. It assumes that that's where the input should go. I don't need to wake anything up to say, okay, I'm logging in now. I'm on the login screen. It's assuming that I want to log in. I just hit my password, enter, and I'm in. So very small thing maybe for a lot of people, but it's a bit of a pet peeve of mine. So for startup login, Linux beats Windows 10 in my view. So the next one was a big issue for me, and I think would be a big issue for a lot of people, stability. So I had this idea in my head, I think, that Linux, maybe wouldn't be as stable. As some of you know, Garuda is Arch-based, rolling release. It's going to get some updates that maybe will, bork out some other parts of your system. So I was kind of expecting Linux would be a little less stable. And again, maybe that's the cost for going open source. And happily, I am totally wrong. So I have little glitches and bugs here and there with the Garuda install, and I have little glitches and bugs here and there running Windows 10. So in terms of stability, I'm going to give it a tie. I haven't had any outstanding issues running Garuda so far that I haven't run into on Windows 10. And yeah, same vice versa. It's just they are equally stable. If you think of Windows as a stable system, then think of Garuda Linux as a stable system, in my experience on my hardware. Okay, the next one is compatibility. And this is one that I didn't want to speak too much to at the stage that I was at, because I think a lot of you know my compatibility issues are going to be mostly audio, hardware, and software related. So I did do a bunch of trying to get some of my paid plugins and paid applications working, and I had some issues. I had some successes and I had some issues. So really here I have to give it to Windows, just because over the years I have accumulated thousands of dollars in audio software, and it seems like about half of that is either just completely a no-go or has so many issues, will get bugged with each update, each whatever, that, it's kind of like you don't even want to mess with that. You're better off just doing something else. So I have to give compatibility to Windows. Just a couple of little quick notes here, though. There were a couple of things. I use messages for web sometimes. I have an Android phone, so I like to just quickly, check my texts from the computer. I had issues with that on FireDragon on Garuda. It wouldn't read the QR code to install or to authenticate. But I didn't have any issues in Firefox, so that worked perfectly for me in Firefox. And I think I forgot to mention this before, but I use a Steam Link to stream from my PC, my whatever computer I'm using, to a TV in a different part of my house. When I first used that with Garuda, I was getting these weird issues where periodically it seemed like, I guess, greens, blues, and like pinks or reds. Whenever there was a certain intensity of color, the screen would kind of flash that color for like a second or two. So I found some guides that other people had gone through that, and I did a lot of the things that they said, and I didn't notice that it was fixed immediately. And then when I locked both the I think the client and the host options to 720p locked, That did it for me. So I'm not really sure what exactly it was. There were a few other fixes that I found on the Steam forums if anybody else is having those issues. But as of now, the Steam link is working 100%. No issues, no visual glitches. So those were two things that I, had a little bit of compatibility issues with. So yeah, one more note on compatibility. Davinci Resolve is available for Windows, Mac, and Linux. Davinci Resolve does not want to work on my Garuda Linux install. I have an AMD card. I have an AMD processor. So, is this possibly an AMD thing? I don't know. I've spent a couple hours investigating and installing different libraries, trolling the forums, the Garuda forums, the Davinci forums, Blackmagic forums. So I'm pretty close to just kind of giving up on this one. I've been using Kden Live for a little while. It's not, it's not quite Davinci Resolve, but it's not bad. So am I willing to make that sacrifice? That one doesn't hit me that hard, but still I'm giving compatibility to Windows, which, probably a lot of people saw coming. The developers will support the operating system where 90% of their user base is. Shocking. Okay, so another one that was a bit of a surprise for me is speed. So I got my main desktop PC back up and running, and I was kind of thinking, okay, well now I've got, the faster processor, I've got more RAM, I've got this, I got that, I got the graphics card. So here's where it's going to be, maybe the laptop will fall a little bit behind, and I'll be gosh darned if Linux is not still faster. Yeah. So now my laptop runs faster than my desktop, which was not previously the case because my laptop is not nearly as powerful as my desktop. But yeah, speed, Linux wins hands down. Hands down. Gaming. This one is going to be slightly controversial. For me, I am giving this to Linux. This is probably unique to me, so I think I had this written down officially as a tie, but Windows has more native support, more day one support, more support for those, anti-cheat type things. So, if you want a game day one, if you want to have the broadest range, the broadest selection, the broadest ability to depend on a developer to keep their software compatible and working, then yeah, Windows is the one to go for. For me, I don't really play that many, brand new games. I don't really play that many, anti-cheat or where you have to download a separate client or whatever. So really, for me, when I throw gaming tasks at Garuda, it just does them all. The thing that I've noticed most is my laptop is not a gaming machine. I didn't buy it to be a powerful gaming machine. I always intended games to be a desktop thing, and the laptop would just be for portability, for editing, for coding, for those kinds of things. So when I couldn't run most games, or I couldn't run the more advanced games in my Steam library on my laptop, I was not really surprised, and I was not really that bummed out, because for me, that just wasn't what this machine was about. It wasn't expensive, it wasn't powerful, period. My surprise came when, just to test them, I installed some of these games on Garuda, and now my laptop can play them. So, for instance, where's the list? Actually, this is probably the most new game that I have, Mountain Blade Bannerlord. I couldn't run that. That ran, at maybe 2 FPS or something at lowest settings. Now on Garuda at lowest settings, I'm going to guess it's around 20 to 30 maybe. Not amazing performance, but it works and I can play it. Whereas on Windows, on this same machine, it chugged so hard, it barely worked. And the same goes for Fallout 4, Dark Souls 3, just a bunch of games that just seemed like a little too much for the laptop to handle. And, no sweat off my brow, but now that I'm in Garuda Linux, it seems like, I don't know if that just freed up enough background processing or whatever, but they run. Low settings, not like rock solid 60 FPS, but again, that's hardware, for me anyway, at least. They run way better than they did on Windows 10. So the fact that they run at all is a little impressive. And I also got Apex Legends working, and I didn't try. Uh, I just installed it, just click install, click play, and then I was playing. Two big issues. One, it took like 15 minutes the first time I started it for the, like, I guess the shaders to compile or whatever. Second big issue, and this is a much larger one, I got stuck in the lobby after. So after I got killed, and there's still other people playing the game, you have the option to leave, but I was not able to leave. The leave button just didn't do anything, so I had to just hard quit out of the whole game. But yeah, I've seen a lot of people saying Apex Legends doesn't work, and it just did for me. So not very helpful for anyone who is having issues, but yeah, it worked for me. So yeah, personally, I want to give this win to Linux because everything that I've tested, everything that I've wanted to run has run, and has run better than it has on Windows. But I understand that for a lot of people that's not going to be the case, and as we will see, there can be that one single thing that's the make or break for the Linux experience. Next up, we have the App Store. And the App Store, I don't know why, but the Microsoft App Store, I've just always had issues with it. On pretty much every machine I've ever run, I did get it to install Python for me, of all things. But yeah, a lot of the times it would just freeze. It would give me authentication errors, login errors, whatever. It would just be a little bit buggy. Add remove software in, I think you can get to it by searching PAMAC, or yeah, you can search for PAMAC, or you can just search for add remove software. Just type add, and there it is. It's easy. It works. It has a broader range of places that it searches than I even realized initially. But yeah, App Store, Linux beats Windows. Boom. Okay, customization. This one is like it doesn't even bear mentioning, really. Yeah, Linux wins. It's not even close. Next, we have ease of use. So this one I am giving a tie, and it comes with a big asterisk because I know that I have more experience with Windows and with the file system in particular. And I know that is, I've been watching videos, I've been learning about where everything is located, but I know that's my big weakness. So I want to just 100% award this to Linux because in most ways it just does everything. It's an intuitive system. Every computing instinct that I have, it seems to have a solution or something there for it. But just getting to terms with the file system, with the handful of, the terminal commands, with all those extra things, and the fact that I know Windows, the fact that I've used it for so long, kind of brought it back down and evened things out. So on one hand, I think that's kind of not super fair because, like I said, Windows is easier for me to use because I know it well, because I've used it for longer. But that is probably also going to be the case for most people coming to Linux. So yeah, if all things were equal and I was coming to computing for the first time, ease of use, I would say easily would go to Linux. Okay, and we've been putting the hurt on Windows for a little while, but here's a little win for it. Multi-monitor support. So I am using KDE Plasma. I don't know exactly what in that is responsible for the tiling, the window management, but this is apparently a bug that's been around for a while. When my computer goes to sleep, when it wakes up, the second monitor will think that the top of the monitor is right around here. So it'll leave this empty, and I don't think it's doing it right now. But yeah, it's opening and closing. So I read in a forum somewhere that can be caused by having your multi-monitor set up with the tops of the monitors at different heights. And sure enough, I noticed that, when I eyeballed, I opened up my display settings and I checked where my second monitor was, where the arrangement was. The tops, as you can see, are not lined up. And if I look right where that line is, that seems to be the line where the apps will maximize to. So this is a problem that I don't know, for me is not really that big a problem. I'm contemplating solving it with a little cardboard box so that my laptop can be actually physically lined up with the top of the other monitor. But yeah, just little things like having to turn off the monitor and back on again, or unplug the HDMI and plug it back in. Over time, it's kind of gotten to be a bit of a chore. Once in a blue moon, my main monitor will go, or not, I shouldn't say my main monitor. I treat it as my main monitor. Technically, it's the second monitor in the display settings. But it will go black for like a second, and I'll have a tiny heart attack that something's wrong, that it's failed, whatever. And then it'll just come back and totally be working again. So, really minor things. Nothing here is a game breaker. But when you compare it to the Windows experience, which is just seamless multi-monitor support for me anyway, yeah, I gotta give that one to Windows. Okay, so this next one I originally had as a tie, and I'll tell you why. So this next one is the file browser. Windows Explorer is slow, and it sucks, and I hate it. Even when I was on Windows, I downloaded One Commander so that I could have a more kind of Finder-like, or indeed Dolphin-like experience. And I gave this a tie because I like Dolphin a lot better. I now know that those Finder-like column things are called Miller columns. And although Files was a little bit slow, Pantheon Files was a little bit slow for me when using the Miller columns, and that ultimately was a deal breaker for me, I am not finding that the transition to Dolphin is all that bad. I've made a few little tweaks, but the biggest one for me was adding this. So I am not accustomed to having to refresh when I create a new file or new folder or whatever. And when I was doing the Linus Tech Tips challenge, I was zipping files, and I didn't notice, but the zip had actually finished, and finished successfully a lot sooner than I realized, because I needed to refresh the folder to see it. And for me, that was like a big, what the heck is going on? Why is this not refreshing why is it not detecting as soon as I've created a new file? Like, that seems like a pretty big deal, or one of those things that, your file system or your operating system could hook into to refresh or to update the display. So I did a bunch of testing, for this video, and sure enough, every new file I created, everything I tried to do, it updated immediately, and I didn't have to refresh it. So I don't know. It's one of those. It left a little bit of a taste in my mouth, but maybe this is something that does happen on Windows too. Like, I think this is one of the things that Linus mentioned in his video, and he's not a Linux user, so I assume that this is just something. Sometimes some operations are not caught. It feels to me like this was more of just a little glitch than anything else, but nonetheless, it's a learning experience. I've got my refresh button in there just to remind me, and of course F5 will work, but yeah, it was just not part of my workflow to think, okay, I need to refresh a folder on my desktop to see a file that I've created. So for that reason, and that reason alone, I'm giving it a tie. That's not really fair. I really feel like I should probably give Dolphin the win, because it's a very nice, fast program. Miller columns are no. It's a nice program. Okay, so the next two are pretty tied together, actually, and they're both ties. So Peripherals. Windows can see that iLock USB key, and I can, as a result, use a bunch of that software that I paid for. But Windows also has a super hard time with new devices when it doesn't have the drivers for them. It can't really deal with, audio interfaces without an ASIO driver, a specifically written ASIO driver. And where is it? This thing is like a foreign language to my PC. It just cannot understand the PlayStation controller. So I downloaded, an extra firmware, and I got it working, and it was all good. And then I plugged it in again, and it's not working again. So, I can download the firmware, I can delete the firmware, and blah, 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 blah. But basically, it's something that tricks the PC into seeing the PlayStation controller as an Xbox controller. And that allows it to work flawlessly. Contrast that with Linux, where I basically just had that controller turned on at the same time as my laptop, And it was like, oh, hey, I see that you got a PlayStation 3 controller there. Would you like me to just automatically set it up and map it to all your favorite? And I was like, sure. And then boom, I'm playing with my gamepad. No, fancy stuff to download. When I was going through the Garuda welcome, it showed me a couple of controller utilities that I could download. So I clicked on those. So maybe, again, that's not fair to say that I didn't download any utilities, but yeah, it just detected it and it worked out of the box. So, yeah, peripherals and audio is going to be the next thing. Again, the audio mixer, the interface, it just immediately found it and started operating in, at least as far as I can tell, relatively low latency mode for regular system audio. I'm not talking about recording music or anything. And yeah, audio, Windows sucks natively, but when I download the ASIO driver for my mixer, I get low latency performance. And the big kicker, native support for iLok. So it's kind of kicking me. I did spend a bunch of time. I investigated downloading and installing my isotope plugins, which I was advised was not a great idea because you can't authenticate them. My Waves plugins, which was not a good idea because, they're pretty unstable. They don't really work that well. You might have to uninstall and reinstall. My SoundToys plugins, which automatically downloaded and installed and ran the iLok license manager and ran it flawlessly to the point where I thought, is this just going to work? Is this, is this happening? And then the only thing it couldn't see was the iLok, which was plugged in. And I chased that around for a while. I downloaded, whatever I could find. I followed whatever instructions, and I ended up borking the iLok license manager so it doesn't open anymore. Yeah, I think for me anyway, just because of the companies that I've supported over the years, I may just have to kind of have a clean break with Linux audio. So a plus side is, there's a lot of companies that I can't get to work or are going to be buggy or, maybe won't work. A plus side is Ableton is working relatively well, and all of the Ableton packs that I have bought over the years do translate. So I may be losing plugins, but I'm not losing all of my, paid virtual instruments at least. So yeah, it was a tough one. Peripherals and audio, I ultimately gave it a tie because because I'm gaining a lot in terms of performance and I'm losing a lot in terms of commercial software that I have paid for over the years. So the next category is a feeling. So this is just purely emotional. When I use Windows, I feel a little dirty now. I feel kind of like I'm getting a monsterism of the person just every time I use it. And every time I open up Linux and I'm in this Garuda environment, I'm just like, yeah, free software, open source, sharing knowledge and technology and love. And yeah, it's not going to be a dystopian hellscape. So the emotional experience is much better on Linux. That maybe doesn't weigh that heavily for a lot of people, but that was a thing for me, one of those weird, quirky things. Okay, and the last one is overall. So when I'm tallying these up, there are 14 altogether. And this one is included in the 14. And a lot of people might say, overall should be, you just add it up and you see which one has the most points. So if we were to do that, we'll just say Windows got 2 points out of a possible 14. Linux got 6 points out of a possible 14. And the tie got 6 points out of a possible 14. So the reason why I included overall as a separate category rather than just adding everything up together is that there can be a single straw. So Linux it's got triple the points. And if you include even the ones that that tied, it still handily beats down Windows. But that compatibility thing, that proprietary commercial technology, software, whatever it is, sometimes that can be the single breaking point. And so for me, I really want to, leave Microsoft and Apple, everybody, behind, leave them in the dust. But I don't think I can do that. I don't think I can give up all that stuff. So gaming wasn't super important to me. I had a really pleasant surprise that most of the games that I feel like playing, that I want to play anyway, still work. But so far with the audio stuff, the Linux native stuff is great. And I feel like I have to say that every time because, like I said, this is the reason why I gave it, or I wanted to give it the nod over Windows anyway, because in terms of performance, again, on the same machine, you'll get better performance. But if you are, a Pro Tools user, if you are an Ableton Live user, if you are a user of any number of unsupported DAWs, plugins, virtual instruments, whatever, and I'm sure this carries over to many other disciplines, many other professionals who are transitioning from, previous software that they had to use. Sometimes the one thing can break it overall. So my overall score was a tie because, what did I write? Windows is worse in almost every way. But, and though Linux is better in almost every way, I'm going to have to walk away from a lot of time and money invested in software tools. And that really evens it out for me. And that really is maybe enough to say, I'm not quite done with Microsoft yet. But I do still like Linux better. It does seem to be better at most everything. And the only thing that holds it back is that integration with proprietary technology. And that is something that I feel a little, I don't know, mixed up about too, because when I was able to get the SoundToys stuff installing and it popped up the iLok license manager and everything was just rolling along well, I thought, hey, this is great. I'm just going to have, my working system. And then when it didn't work and I was left with this little chunk of DRM sitting on, what's otherwise a pristine, clean, open source machine, I felt a little bit dirty again. So I don't know. Maybe it just has to be a philosophical change. Maybe you have to be cool with not taking the commercial with you. Although there is a lot of stuff that, there is a lot of compatibility. If some of that stuff ever changes in the future, I don't know. But yeah, for the time being at least, even though Linux scores way higher on my personal test, my personal metric, the overall result is a tie for just the things that I personally will have to sacrifice to leave Microsoft behind anyway. But until then, Garuda Linux has been a really surprising and enjoyable addition to my life, and a glimmer of hope, at least, that I could potentially happily leave Microsoft behind one day. Okay, thanks for watching. Bye. See you next time. Bye.